Legal cynicism is an extreme form of distortion of legal consciousness characterized by a conscious disregard for legal norm while formally complying with them or using them for self-interest purposes. In contemporary psychology, legal cynicism is viewed not merely as a bad attitude toward the law, but as a complex cultural mechanism often linked to distrust in state institutions. The history of legal cynicism in Russia is inseparably from the evolution of legal consciousness from period of radical regime changes. Unlike simple denial of law, legal nihilism, cynicism in Russian history has often manifested as the instrumental use of law to retain power or secure personal gain. Main historical stages of this cynicism. First, pre-revolutionary period, serfdom. The foundation of legal cynicism were laid during the height of serfdom, particularly under Catherine II. Decrees of that era effectively stripped millions of people of civil rights, leaving them only with obligations to the state and landowners. This created a gap between paper law and real life marked by powerlessness, shaping the belief that law was merely the will of the strong. Second Soviet period, revolutionary expediency. After 1917, law officially became an instrument of class struggle. The concept of socialist legality was often replaced with expediency, allowing any formal norms to be bypassed for political goals. Cynicism manifested itself in the coexistence of ideal declarations, for example, the 1936 Constitution, with a complete disregard in the practice. This formed a dual consciousness, public reverence for the law combined with a private contempt for it. Third, 1990s, legal house. The collapse of USSR led to the systematic crisis in which old norms no longer worked and new ones were widely ignored. During this period, legal cynicism became a strategy of survival and enrichment. Legal loopholes were exploited for wild privatization and corporate raid disguised as lawful procedures. And fourth, contemporary Russian. Today, cynicism is often described as administrative or elite. It manifests itself in the selective application of law and in the use of legal mechanism as tool of pressure against opponents while formally observing all procedures. The most widespread and recognized example of a legal cynicism is the use of the law as a lever, legal instrumentalism, where a legal norm is formally observed but applied to achieve goals direct opposite to justice. The most common example is consumer extremism. This refers to a situation in which a citizen, fully aware of a consumer protection law, uses it not to protect legitimate interests but to profit from unjustified fines and penalties. How it works? A person deliberately purchases a product with a microscopic defect that does not interfere with its use or provokes a formal mistake by the seller. They then file a claim, intentionally delay pre-trial settlement, and demand penalties in court that exceed the price of the product several times over. Where the cynicism lies, there is no legal nihilism here, nor rejection of the law. On the contrary, the person is a fan of the law, knowing every comma, but applies it with a self-interest intent, turning justice into an instrument of personal enrichment. Other classic examples is professional cynicism among law enforcement, quota system. A police officer understands that a detainee committed a minor offense, but qualifies it under the most serious article or provokes a more serious act in order to meet performance targets. The law is formally observed in the paperwork, but its essence, the protection of a public order, is replaced by career interests. Fiction's bankruptcy. Entrepreneur transfers assets to front persons using legal contractual forms, gifts, purchase agreements, and then initially bankruptcy procedures. proceedings. They act strictly with the framework of arbitrage procedure code, but their goal is not financial recovery, rather the discharges of a debt to real creditors. Abuse of rights in the corporate world. A minority shareholder files dozens of lawsuits on country-wide grounds in order to block the work of a general shareholders meeting. Each individual lawsuit is legal, but the cumulative effect is aimed at paralyzing a competitor's business. Prevalence indirect indicators. Researchers assess levels of legal cynicism through the rule of law index and psychological surveys measuring trust in institutions. Global context. Russia ranks 113th out of 142 countries in the 2023 World Justice Project Rule of Law Index. The main shortcoming concern constraints on government powers and civil justice, creating fertile ground for cynicism. Regional dynamics. According to studies in 2024, indicators of the rule of law declined in 57% of global jurisdictions, a trend linked to rising authoritarianism and declining institutional accountability. Regional examples: it's North Caucasus, Chechnya, Dagestan. It's the practice of collective punishment of relatives of individuals suspected of extremism. For example, demolition of homes or threat of detaining family members, which directly contradicts federal law, but it's applied by authorities as an effective measure. A sense of cynicism. Law enforcers consciously ignore the presumption of innocence and individual responsibility to achieve operational goals. Border regions, Belgorod-Kursk regions, have solved problems as a rising crime linked to the return of combatants and illegal arms trafficking. Gangsters' norms replace official law in everyday conflict resolution. Volga region and Central Russian Tatarstan, Arkhangelsk region. In these regions, torture in place of detention followed by minimal or suspended sentence for the responsible officers. In Tatarstan, for example, police officers received sentences disproportionate to the gravity of the crimes. Professional cynicism of a system aimed at the protection its own, while formally conducting investigations. In general trends, 2024-2025, it's a Donbassization of law, the spread of informal practices and disregard for legal procedure from a conflict zones into Russia's internal regions. And selective justice, a sharp increase by 3-9 times in convictions for treason and espionage in the first half of 2024, which is experts linked to expansive interpretations of law for political purposes. Measurement methods. To quantitatively assess cynicism, researchers use standardized scale in which respondents rate their agreement with a statement using 4 or 5-point Likert scale. The other methods is Sampson-Bartusch scale, includes key indicators of perceiving law as non-binding, such as laws are made to be broken. To get ahead in life, you sometimes have to break the law. Nowadays, there is no point in being an honest person. And multi-dimensional legal cynicism scale, Gifford. A more recent 17 items instrument divided into 3 factors: legal antipathy, law legitimacy, and legal corruption. It's possible to use Niederhoff scale, a specialized instrument for measuring professional cynicism among police officers used by the Office of Justice Programs. Prevalence and comparative data. Global studies show significant variations in attitude towards law depending on region and historical experience. And city comparison. We can compare São Paulo and, for example, Zurich in Europe. Studies found that the average level of legal cynicism among adolescents in Zurich was higher than in São Paulo, Also, the structural factors, example, linked to low self-control, remain similar. Attitudes towards bypassing the law. In Belgium, 52, the Netherlands, 44, Japan, 44% respondents more often believe that the law may be disregarded for the sake of a morally right act, reflecting inflexible legal consciousness forbidding on cynicism. In countries with authoritarian pasts such as Turkey, 79, and Chile, 73, declared law obedience is higher, which may reflect fear of punishment rather than internal commitment to the law. Ghettoization and ethnic groups. In the United States and Europe, high levels of cynicism are often observed in the areas of concentrated disadvantages and among marginalized groups, example, Roma communities in Eastern Europe, where the law is perceived not as a protection but as a hostile external force. Rule of law index as an indirect factor can be used. Countries with the lowest scores, Venezuela, Cambodia, Afghanistan, demonstrate systematic legal cynicism both at the level of government and within society. Legal cynicism among adolescents. Legal cynicism among adolescents is stable, distrustful, or dismissive attitude toward law and legal institutions expressed in disbelief in their fairness, necessity, or effectiveness of laws and law enforcement agencies. It often manifests in the belief that laws are arbitrary, selectively enforced, or irrelevant to real life, and that violations go unpunished or are even socially acceptable. Among adolescents, legal cynicism may take the following forms: skepticism toward rules and legal norms, justification of unlawful behavior, everyone breaks the law anywhere, negative or hostile attitudes towards the police, courts, and other authorities, and reliance on informal norms, peer rules, street justice, instead of legal ones. This phenomenon is usually shaped by the social environment, family attitudes, media narratives, peer groups, and personal experience of injustice, inequality, or corruption, as well as the broad manifestations of legal nihilism within society. Legal cynicism among Russian adolescents is to a large extent shaped by the influence of social media, which today function as one of the key agents of socialization, often more influential than school or family. Key mechanism of social media influence. It's first, normalization of law breaking. Social media are saturated with content in which violations of the law are presented as normal, ironic, or a means of self-assertion. Life hacks on how to bypass rules and restrictions. Videos of illegal acts without consciousness for their authors. Romanticizations of cleverness, deception, and grace schemes. This fosters among adolescents the belief that the law is merely a formula that a smart person should know how to circumvent. Second, discrediting legal institutions. Content related to the police, court, and official is most often negative, sarcastic, or expose-oriented. As a result, what develops is not a critical legal consciousness, but a cynical one, a refusal to believe in the intrinsic value of law itself. Third, algorithmic implications of radical attitudes. Social media algorithms promote emotional charged content, scandals, conflicts, humiliations of authorities, and displays of force. Adolescents find themselves in an informative bubble where the law is portrayed as an instrument of repression, protests and rejections of norm are framed as a signs of awareness and maturity. Fourth, substitution of law with the informal rules and group norms. With online communities, adolescents internalize alternative behavior regulators, the rule of their own, bloggers, influencers, subcultures, informal codes based on the group loyalty rather than law, the principle of selective justice, anything is allowed for insiders, nothing for outsiders. This reproduces the traditional Russian model of substituting law with a personal tie and informal norms, now transposed into the digital environment. The effect of impunity and distance, the online space created an illusion of anonymity and absence of consequences. Adolescents so do not perceive a direct link between violation and responsibility, become accustomed into aggression, hate, and bullying as acceptable forms of behavior, transfer this experience into offline life. Legal cynicism among Russian political forced migrants. Traumatized legal consciousness. For this group, law is associated not with social protection but with an instrument of repression, the legitimization of violence, arbitrary enforcement of norms. Law is experienced as a form of threat rather than a neutral regulator, generating not mere distrust but existential alienations from law. The cynicism of system insiders. Unlike the general population, many members of a displaced opposition have a solid knowledge of the law, and they are acutely aware of the gap between legal text and the enforcement practices. They have witnessed the selective use of law. Their cynicism is reflexive and rational, grounded in knowledge rather than ignorance. We know how the law is supposed to work, and we know that it doesn't. Its split attitude toward law is characterizations of forced migrants. Ambivalence is characteristic. Rejection of law as a real mechanism of justice, recognition of its symbolic and rhetorical value, the language of appeals, international norms, human rights. Law is used as a discourse and tool of legitimation, but not perceived as a genuinely functioning internal system. Migrants' transfer of distrust to the host country. Even in countries with a strong rule of law traditions, there are expectations of hidden arbitrariness persist. Court decisions are viewed with suspicion. Procedures are perceived as formal rituals. Cynicism functions as a psychology defense. Not trusting means not being betrayed by the system again. And sometimes these migrants has a paradox of hyperlegalism. Among some political migrants, the opposition reaction emerges. Excessive fixation on the rules, pedantic compliance with the norms, fear of even minor violations. This is not trust in law, but fear of it, the results of repressive socialization. Law is a lost value and as an ideal, a key distinction from political migrants. Law is not rejected outright, it's experienced as a lost and betrayed ideal. Here, cynicism is normative in nature. Laws should have been different, therefore we no longer believe in it. It's a lozung. Collective trauma and solidarity is characterized the political migrants. Within emergency political communities, the following take shape: collective memory of repression, stable narrative about the fictitious nature of law, skepticism toward all the state institutions. This sustains and reproduces legal cynicism even under the new condition. So, legal cynicism among Russian political forced migrants is not a rejection of law as an idea, but a refusal to believe in its good faith application by the state. In its form of critical, trauma-based legal consciousness that may evolve either into stable distrust of all legal system, or with a positive experience into consciousness commitment to the rule of law as a value distinct from the state itself.